So, um, so if we go into the first slide, I wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of where we're actually located. And we're right in central New Jersey, the north central area of New Jersey. So we're about an even hour's commute out of downtown Manhattan, New York City proper. There's a Midtown Direct, New Jersey Transit runs a Midtown Direct, and within about 50 to 60 minutes, you can be in Morristown Center. It's it's the center of the county, a county seat. So it's a fairly large community. There's several universities, higher educational facilities. Fairleigh Dickinson is right nearby. Drew is nearby. Seton Hall is very close by, just a little bit north of us. So it's a very active hub. If you travel a little bit further west from Morristown, you're really entering the horse country. Beautiful rolling countryside, open land, moving all the way into Pennsylvania. It's a beautiful territory, and we're right on that cusp of more densely populated residential areas, and then country. It starts to really become countrified just a little bit west of us. So it's a nice central location. If you do visit, the next slide shows a little bit of the history of Morristown proper. It's Washington's headquarters is located right only less than a mile down the road from where the Morris Museum is located. Jockey Hollow is where the encampment was for 10 to 12,000 of the Continental troops. They had a couple of very rough winters right here where they lost an awful lot of troops because of how harsh that winter time was. But it was key in formulating as well the Lafayette, the different aspects of the alliance, you might say, between Hamilton, Lafayette, and Washington. They met several times right here in Morristown. And it's got a very nice, rich history, as well as the home in which the museum is located, which is just outside of downtown Morristown. It's just a little bit more than walking distance, but it's in what's called Twin Oaks Mansion. And the next slide shows you an outside view of the residence. The Twin Oaks Mansion was created in about 1913. It's a historic structure on the National Register as well. It was designed by McKim, Mead, and White and built in 1913 as a residential home for the Frelinghuysen family. So we're in the process right now of reslating, restoring the roof. So when you go there, we're missing a couple of the trees are now gone, and scaffolding's outside because there's a major slate roof restoration work going on. And to the right-hand side, you see where some newer additions have been added to the museum, where the main entrance really is to the right-hand side, where the cursor is just sort of pointing that out. That's the main entrance to the museum, is over to the right side. The next slide has a little bit more of a lineage where of the museum itself. The Morris Museum started as a cabinet of curiosities and a local nonprofit institution, which the nonprofit is still there, but our cabinet of curiosities is no longer. But they were the start of it. It slowly grew. It became known as, romantically, you might say, locally, as Morristown's attic, because anyone moving or had objects that they wanted to leave behind or donate were accepted. So it's sort of a wide-ranging collection. We've probably got close to, I think, probably around 65 to 75,000 objects in our collection total. And it's wide-ranging right across the board, from clothing, costuming, toys, dolls, artwork, fine art, regional. We've really specialized more recently with regional artists, from the New Jersey immediate area. So we've got some very substantial collections of New Jersey artists. Eventually, the museum grew, and in 1964, we were able to purchase Twin Oaks Mansion and move into that. There was another major expansion with a Bickford Theater, a 312-seat theater that was added in 1970. In 73, we were the first museum in New Jersey accredited by the American Association of Museums. In 1990, a very large 5,000 square foot main gallery and a parking deck behind the building was added. And then in 2002 is when Myrto Guinness passed away. And about almost an even year later, in 2003, the Morris Museum was named to become the beneficiary of his collection. And if any of you had had the opportunity at one of the Amica or MBSI national meetings or even chapter meetings to come and visit Mr. Guinness's New York City residence, it was sort of a world unto itself. You entered these townhouses, and it was just another completely different world you were entering. You couldn't see out the windows. You had no idea if it was daylight or nighttime. It could be 3, 4 o'clock in the morning before Mr. Guinness would wrap up entertaining and touring the collection. But he loved sharing it with the public. And it was amazing. 750 objects and about over 5,000 pieces of music that went along with the objects in basically 2 typical New York City townhouses. So it was very difficult to handle large groups. But he did host several annual conventions and bus tours going in and out of his residence there in Manhattan. And it on the Upper East Side. It was right around the corner from Park Avenue on East 80th Street, a few blocks from the Metropolitan Museum. After the collection was awarded to the Morris Museum, that launched a fundraising campaign and the design process to build an addition to house the collection. And another 5,000 square foot gallery was created and constructed as a permanent exhibit for the Myrto D. Guinness collection on the main floor of the museum. And then just recently in 2019, right before COVID, the pandemic, we became New Jersey's only Smithsonian affiliate. And we, in the a couple of years past that, opened Spark Lab, which is a Smithsonian creation that really is for youngsters anywhere from, say, second grade to as a teenager. You're 15 or 16 years old. So anywhere between about 5 and 15 is the key age range, which Spark Lab tries to educate and address and sort of light the light bulb in their head of creativity. Everything having to do with science, technology, engineering, math, and the arts. We add the A and we call it STEAM instead of STEM, because the things that you learn in STEM are all related, keyed into the Guinness collection, because all of that is represented within the Guinness collection. And at this point, we're the second largest museum in New Jersey at about 75,000 square feet. Moving on, this is a little bit of an overview of the first floor, not the lower level and not the second level, but just the first floor of the museum. And I've highlighted the area where Guinness occupies that yellow area right in the middle. It's sort of the hole in the donut or the center of the U shape. You can see where the other main gallery, where rotating exhibits happen, to the left-hand corner, left-hand side. And the Bickford Theater on the opposite side of the Guinness is a beautiful 312-seat repertory theater with a stage and concerts that go on regularly, live concerts, theatrical presentations, stage shows. A little of everything is right there. And we have a very popular jazz series, and we also have had performances on the back parking deck behind it for outdoor performances, which became really popular during the pandemic when nobody really wanted to be indoors. So we started outdoor concerts, and the artists that came absolutely loved it because they were just dying to actually perform. So by 2001 and 2002, that became extremely popular as outdoor concerts on the parking deck. And then the rest of the rooms, there's historical part of the mansion. This is, as you enter the entry pavilion, this little short video just serves a very quick walkthrough towards the Guinness collection. This is a visitor's aspect. The Bickford Theater is to your right. The mansion is to your left, the Twin Oaks Mansion. We've restored the facade, used that as part of the interior of the museum, and this is part of the 5,000 square foot Guinness collection, permanent exhibit. And into the entry gallery, where we have usually 4 or 5 different of the pieces from the collection, where we highlight them and bring them out, and we rotate these pieces with other ones that we might have in storage or even some loaned objects. And this video is, you'll see next, is a very nice, about 1867 B.A. Bremond full orchestral musical box. Interchangeable cylinder, drum bells, castanet, reed organ section, and a wooden flute organ inside of it. And I just wanted to mention that MBSI, the East Coast chapter of MBSI, very graciously donated monies to help with the restoration of this piece because the cabinet needed some pretty serious cabinet work. But the mechanism was very intact and very nice shape. So without further ado, here's the Bremond. Then walking from that area around into Music Revolution in the main part of the one section of the gallery. Here it's laid out a little bit more chronologically from the earlier pieces from the late 1700s, musical rings, lockets, snuff boxes, into the heyday of the cylinder music boxes that were mainly produced in Switzerland, Austria, as well as in France. So it gives a whole little variety. It's sound stations scattered all through the exhibit. Now it goes into the organettes in the early 1900s, end of the early 1900s with disc music boxes, foot pump player piano to your right. Now we're going to be focusing on the Mills Violano in that section. And just around the corner from where the Mills Violano and the Nickelodeon are highlighted is Animated Worlds. And this section of the exhibit really focuses on the automata, the mechanical dolls of the Guinness collection, which Mr. Guinness, Murto, was fascinated with these as well. Popular during the same period of time as the cylinder and disc music boxes, the heyday really sort of being between 1850 and just before World War I. About 1915, 1918 was the sort of the end of that popular period for these mechanical figurines. There were about a half a dozen makers. They were all located right in Paris, France, in the third arrondissement and in Paris, where a lot of the arts and crafts people were located. Other doll manufacturers that made the porcelain dolls were also located in that same area, that same arrondissement. But these half a dozen makers of these automata wanted to animate their pieces, make them come alive, you might say. So they made a wide variety of them. They are very rare to find today, very scarce. And the Guinness collection has over 100, probably about 115 to 120 automata before it gets down into the mechanical toys, the walking animals, the menagerie of animals that are all clockwork driven. Most of these larger automata also incorporate a musical movement, Swiss or French cylinder type musical movement. So there was always some musical entertainment, musical aspect that came into, as well as the animations during the performance of each one of these pieces. Two of them we brought some videos. The next one will be of two of the pieces in the permanent exhibit here. The bird trainer is pictured to the left-hand side. We go to the next slide, or the video, and the seamstress on the right-hand side, which is a representation of new technology. It literally, that piece dates from about around 1875 to 1880, made by Henri Fallebois. And it represents the young woman of the household in front of that new technology, a sewing machine, a newfangled sewing machine. So they were right on top and tried to portray the new technology as well. The piece on the left is a little deceiving when you don't have something that gives scale. It's probably close to around 40 inches in height. That automaton is called the bird trainer. It's one of two original of that model that are known to exist. A few other reproductions are out there, but hidden inside of his body is a clockwork mechanism, as well as a cylinder music box movement, as well as a bellows inside to pump air to go through a whistle, slide whistle, to imitate the bird singing. So it's a combination that was made by Gustave Vichy, and the bird portion of this piece was made or contributed by Bontemps, Leon Bontemps. So the video will pull up and you'll see them in operation. And after you leave Animated Worlds, there's what's called Mechanical Universe. And this is where it really ties into the Spark Lab, the Smithsonian Spark Lab that we've created in another part of the building and in the museum. Because this section is really meant to address what makes them tick. How do they perform? How do they do what they do? All these instruments and automata. So in the this is this section, Mechanical Universe, is split up into three different areas, which addresses what's the power source, whether it's gravity, falling sand, the weight, an iron weight driving a music box or a clock, could be a spring in a barrel, and we've got different interactives that where someone can actually, a child, wind up a mainspring to see how the gears and the relationship to a governor, speed control, the release of that energy. Um, if we move on to the next slide, you see a little bit more focus within that area towards the sound section of what instrument or what device is actually creating the sound that you're hearing from them, whether it's a phonograph, reproducer, pinned wooden barrel, the organ pipes, um, the comb of a cylinder music box, the violins, and like the Hupfeld phonoloist or the violano. Could be a little of almost anything. And you see all the glass is protecting. We get such a large volume of the public going through the exhibit on a daily basis, that you can, on the glass, actually see where the palm prints, where the nose prints, the cheek prints are, of what pieces are more popular and how people, kids, are trying to get close to the objects. But now that they're historical artifacts, we need to protect them as best we can too. So we've created these glass protective layers, yet they're open topped, and there's lockable doors in a lot of these different areas. So we can access the Longman, that's a English parlor organ on the left-hand side, and it has a lockable door. So we can unlock it, swing the door open, demonstrate that one piece, and everyone see exactly the interrelationship of the mechanism and what's working, what's pumping. The bellows are pumping to supply the air supply. The pinned wooden barrel is rotating to provide the media or the programming, and then the organ pipes and the keyframe. Everything is very visible, and we're trying to explain all those different aspects. And the next slide shows the far end of of that same area, Mechanical Universe, where we address what's the memory, how's it storing the program, and that most of these programs, most of these instruments, it's a pin on a barrel, a pin in a cylinder, a hole in a disc, a projection on a disc, a hole in a piece of paper or cardboard, as in Lebellian, it's paper book operated. The Luminaire, paper book operated. So the relationship, it's all binary programming, signal, no signal. And kids understand that today with modern technology, and you just need to relate these historical instruments to new modern technology, and then they can see where the basis is, the origins of, is very important. So the memory section is a key one in trying to educate our youngsters as to what these instruments are. They're not just fun. STEAM is related in all of them, no matter whether it's just the architecture, the design, the craftsmanship, the woodwork, the inlay, the marquetry, the artwork on the organs, like the painted facade of the Luminaire, right down to the music that's actually created. So it's a little of all of that wrapped up in this collection, and making it relate to the youth today is extremely important in our museum. As you leave the exhibit itself, we've covered most of, probably 90% of the areas that are represented in the Guinness gallery, the permanent gallery. But there's it still is a minority of the collection. There's about 150 objects on permanent exhibit in this gallery. But as you leave it, the next slide sort of has you walking out of the elevator, which takes you down to the lower level. There's Guinness viewable storage immediately underneath the permanent exhibition area. This storage area, it's only about 1,300 square feet, but it's got 600 more objects in it. Close to 100 automata are downstairs in this storage area, plus cylinder music boxes, player pianos, more Nickelodeons, you name it, and it's stored in here. And this is what we pull from for other temporary exhibits: the animated tableaus, the picture frame pieces, musical tableaus, a huge collection of overture cylinder boxes, probably one of the largest of overture cylinder boxes in the country. Well, it is a reference collection of cylinder music boxes in the collection. Probably close to 300 cylinder music boxes are in this collection. And then we shot, actually, the public is allowed to, or permitted to, look into viewable storage, but it's humidity and temperature controlled, so it's not open to the public on a general daily basis, only on special visitations or special arrangements for small groups. We've had up to about 12 to 15 people maximum on any one of the tour groups, where we lead them into, and they can see and walk down the aisles to actually see some of these instruments in person. And then we pull from the storage for what I call Guinness spin-off exhibits in other galleries in the museum, where we've done Murdo's Music Room. We've done an exhibit that specialized, just focused on New Jersey-made music boxes, with all the disc music boxes that were made, because New Jersey was the hub for Regina, Imperial Symphonian, FG Auto and Company, and Son, that was in Jersey City, Hoboken, West New York, Rahway, New Jersey, let alone player pianos and the organs from Aeolian that were right in Garwood, just 20 minutes south of us, where we are in Morristown. So it's all represented in this collection. And the next video, I am actually demonstrating a few of the pieces right there in viewable storage. This is a bit of a behind the scenes within Guinness viewable storage on the lower level of the museum. The permanent gallery is right immediately above us with about 150 objects. And down here in viewable storage for the Guinness collection is really the majority of the collection. There's over 600 objects here, plus over or close to 6,000 pieces of music, what we call the media. Whether it's the punch metal records, the discs, the pin cylinders, the barrels for the organs. And in some of the drawers, like these, we have some of the smalls of the Guinness collection. In this drawer, we have 3 musical clock bases, very early pieces, very early meaning at the very beginning of the 1800s, about 1810 to 1820 period. And what I'm going to demonstrate for you now is a staggered sectional comb musical movement that was hidden inside of a gilded clock base with a fancy full clock on top that would set the music off to play either every hour or every third hour. Hey, this piece was made by Gustave Vichy, one of the half-dozen automaton makers based in Paris, France. The popular period for these pieces was right between 1850 and about 1915, 1918, right before World War I. This is the Drunk Le Pochard on the park bench. This piece has only been on exhibit one time. It was one of Murdo's Guinness's sort of favorite pieces. It was made by John Longman. It's known as a chamber barrel piano, and it's very early in the generation of these pieces. This dates from between 1795 and about 1803, when John Longman passed away. Longman is well known for his very early pianos and some of the technology that he brought, patents for the systems of throwing hammers against strings for the pianos. But this piece is weight driven, has about a 40-pound lead iron weight that falls in a channel, and that's the driving force. It's a pinned wooden barrel that holds the musical programming. And we're lucky on this piece, it has his calling card right down here, as well as 4 different music barrels that came with the instrument, with all period, early or late 1700s period music. Inside of it, there's a pinned wooden barrel, and at this point, let me wind it up. The tune that this is going to play is My Cottage Near a Wood. Now, at that point, I just wanted to say that every day at 2 o'clock, even though you're not able to, visitors, be entertained by the objects down in viewable storage on a daily basis, every day at 2 o'clock, there's a live demonstration in the permanent gallery upstairs. We have a series of different volunteers. This slide actually is 2 different volunteers that used to do regular demos for us. It's a late Bob Kussner on the left-hand slide, getting ready to present or demonstrate the Lehman Air Orchestraphone, a 49-key fairground organ that's there in the gallery that is loud enough to blow people completely out of the room. But it's a lot of fun and people really enjoy it. And Bob was one of our most dedicated volunteers, loved sharing the collection, former MBSI member and East Coast chapter advocate. And on the right-hand slide is Shep Steenbach, who lives right in Morristown. He's now somewhat retired from giving the live demonstrations, but it shows him at our demonstration counter showing a young group of people a number of different instruments. We usually demonstrate about 6 or 7 pieces there at the demo counter, that area. And then from there, walk into the Guinness collection proper and demonstrate usually 2 different objects, and we rotate which ones we go to most of the time. So we try to keep moving it around. And the next slide actually, I think, shows one of our younger volunteers. Was a high school student, and her mother worked at the museum, and she wanted her daughter to come out of her shell a little bit and actually not have a fear of presenting to public, which she had. And she loved the musical instruments, loved the Guinness collection. So it was a perfect fit to actually train her to do the live demonstrations at 2 o'clock. and she absolutely started coming out of her shell with answering questions and dealing with the public on a daily basis. And it worked symbiotically. It was good for us because now you've got young people watching their peers actually give the demonstration and answering the questions about what is mechanical music and why this stuff, why was it popular back 100 or 200 years ago? So it's always fun to get young people very involved in the collection itself. And not next slide. I already mentioned the Spark Lab and our affiliation with Smithsonian. I think the next slide actually shows a picture of the Spark Lab. It used to be a rocks and mineral gallery, which we moved to the second floor of the building during one of our little renovation projects. And then we rededicated this space to Spark Lab with movable mobile tables. There's different areas where kids can learn about simple machines, simple levers, wind tunnel. We have a device in there called a Musicon, which you can pin a barrel to play a glockenspiel with whatever melody you want to pin. It also has some percussive, I think there's a tambourine as well as wood block on that instrument as well. And next slide, I think might have a little bit of a different viewpoint. We've made a demonstration model for an automaton there on the left, which has a spring-driven clockwork motor, and it has the exposed cams, which show how the programming is for these pieces. On the automata, how do they know what to do when, whether it's a hand waving, an arm raising, lips, eyes moving, head turning, nodding. And something like this is brought out, and right in front of them, they can see exactly what makes it tick. How do they learn that? And then the Dragon interactive at the back, the rear of the right-hand slide is something we had designed and built, fabricated for us, that has an animated dragon on the top, and via those hand crank levers on the board, you can program in different ways those simple levers, simple cams, interactions that create the tail to move, the head to turn, the eyes to shift, the mouth to open. All these different things you can create that dragon to move at your will, depending on the programming you put on those simple devices, simple levers. And not to be underdone, well, this is a little bit newer. They can build their own race car or with tubular little PVC tubing that can all be slid together and actually create different buildings. You could create a little home, a house, a rolling vehicle, turning gears. You can have different sort of educational toys there with gears that you can mix and match to get different rotation and different outputs, you might say, for the different configurations that you're putting together. This has become, the Spark Lab has become very popular with young people, and time tickets at no extra charge is available every day at the front desk. And usually at 20 minutes, I think it's 20 minutes per slot time. And many of you are familiar with Bill Edgerton between Darien, Connecticut and his place in Florida. And we became the beneficiaries of the Edgerton Mechanical Music Library. There's over 6,000 objects in this library that is focused on mechanical music, all forms of mechanical music, as well as automata. And it's a library that is Bill is still in charge of, even though it's under our roof at the Morris Museum. It was donated to the museum. We carved out a niche for it, and he and we are adding to it on a regular basis. I actually expect to see Bill probably within the next couple of weeks. He'll be stopping by with another update, another couple of boxes full of material that have to be added to the library. And following that same theme, the next slide, some of you may be familiar with, well, I was going to say the Duffner, but I got ahead of myself. We have kinetic art, contemporary kinetic art, where one of the questions we usually get at the museum is there anybody making these automata or devices anymore today? And absolutely, we've held and have hosted several different modern contemporary art exhibits in different areas of the building that are all kinetic, all moving, either motor driven, hand driven, weight driven, could be just about any driving force. And these pieces are being made around the world, whether you're in Korea, China, Japan, England, Scotland, France, Germany. There are kinetic artists still making things today, and we, the museum at the Morris, are displaying them whenever we have the opportunity to, both in focused exhibits as well as highlight just one piece or several artists at a time. And we're acquiring pieces, contemporary pieces. These are two that have been added to our permanent collections. The right hand, the Buddha, is a piece by Walter Rossi, an artist based right in New York City. And he very graciously donated that piece after being exhibited in one of our kinetic exhibits. And the piece on the left is the Tick Bird Goes to the Museum by Philip Lowndes in England. And that also has been added to our permanent collection of kinetic art, contemporary kinetic art. Not to be outdone, the next slide shows a piece that you're, I think, very familiar with, having seen it and heard it via Bill Edgerton. This also was donated just before the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, it actually slowly made its way north to the Morris Museum, where it's permanently installed in the rear portion, the demonstration demo area of the Guinness Gallery, is where we have several objects that are not part of the Guinness collection. And now this resides right there. It's 10.5 foot tall, beautifully restored, fabulous salon barrel equestrian by Bernard Duffner of Buffalo, New York. So that we don't demonstrate this on a regular basis, but on special occasions and special group visits, absolutely, it can be requested, and we're happy to demonstrate it for people. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, upcoming events for 2024 will be the fourth time that we've hosted Automata Con. It's an Automata convention that we host at the Morris Museum. And in the past, it has attracted as many as about 250 attendees for a Friday evening cocktail reception, a welcome reception, you might say, on Friday evening. And then all day Saturday, all day Sunday, multiple programs, presentations are given. An exhibition hall is there in the courtyard outside the Guinness, where close to, I think it's 15 tables of modern contemporary makers of kinetic art show what they're doing, demonstrate what they have. There's also a marketplace that can happen there, as well as presentations in both the 300-seat Bickford Theater, as well as the Bickford Gallery is converted so that it actually can seat about 90 people, 95 people in the Bickford Gallery. And then we rotate. So I think the last Automata Con this last year, it's a biannual event, had, I think, 17 or 18 presenters, whether they're museum directors, curators, contemporary artists, makers that are anything from 3D printing and how to do it to sometimes working on a lathe and how to polish, how to blue screws, how to turn a thread. It could be anything from the very basics all the way up to the very complicated. And we've had everything represented there talk-wise from the from the late Renaissance period, the 1600s, all the way through to modern pieces that are made today. So that's coming up on May 17th and 19th next year, something to put on your calendar, or visit the website. Just Google automatacon.org, and probably around January, February is when the schedule will start to be really formulated, and we have a better idea of how many workshops will happening, and what the layout's going to be there and what to expect. But there's also, you can go to the website now and see a video of one of the first Automata Cons that happened. So you get a real flavor of what the event means, and the wide range of ages that are represented by the people that attend it, because it does draw an international crowd, as well as just regionally, and everywhere from the New York tri-state metropolitan area. So very popular to do. And I think there might be one more slide. Well, that's just the morrismuseum.org. So I think that pretty much wraps up my end of the talk. Like to thank our chief curator. We have a new director as well that I didn't include on this. Dr. Thomas Lauman is our executive director of the museum, heading it since the first of the year. And Dr. Ann Raccouli is the chief curator, head of exhibitions, as well as the chief curator for the Guinness collection at this point. And Marcus Romero, who is our PR, marketing, and video guru, who shot a number of the videos which you saw tonight. So I thank everybody. And at this point, if there's any questions, I try to answer them the best I can.
Thank you, Jerry. It was a fascinating presentation, and we now open it up for questions. Anyone who has a question, you can hold down your space bar while you're talking. That way we can hear you, and Jerry will answer the question.